Playtesters, the unsung heroes of board game design. We all know that we need to put our prototype games through the ringer to test them over and over again, and that takes time, energy and commitment. And not just from the designer, but from a wide pool of players. So what makes a great playtester? Let's break it down. I'm Adam Porter. I'm a board game designer from Wales, and for the last 10 years I've been running a regular playtesting group in my local community in Cardiff in Wales. Over those years I've had 10 games published, I've got more in the pipeline, and so I've seen the genuine benefit of meeting a wide variety of different playtesters and trying out all sorts of different approaches to getting my games played, to finding out what the feedback is, and ultimately letting that guide me through to which games I should show to publishers, which ones I should maybe shelve for a while or even abandon entirely. It's the playtesters that give me that context to make those big decisions. I recently made a book. It's my second book about board game design. This one's called Admin Wales Playtesting, and it's available right now on Amazon. You can buy it worldwide, either as a physical paperback like this or as an ebook. And in that book, I talk about the different types of playtesters that are out there. Okay, so who are you going to approach to test your game? And I suspect for most of us, our starting point is probably friends and family. And friends and family are great for all sorts of things. They're really convenient, aside from anything else, to be able to get it in front of somebody who you know will give you a really positive slant on it, give you their time, or maybe actually your family are going to be harsh, your harshest critics, I don't know. What your family isn't is unbiased, okay? Your family cares about you and they want good things for you and they want to see the best in you. And so as a result, you may find that the feedback you get is not as useful as you might get if you started playing it with somebody who was a little bit more detached. So friends and family can only take you so far. What people tend to do then is start to reach out to their gaming groups. Now that's assuming that you attend gaming groups. If you're just playing with friends and family, then you probably need to get out and meet more gamers in order to develop a wider understanding of the board game industry, what games are out there and what they enjoy anyway. But those groups will give you a bunch of contacts for people that you can use as playtesters. They might not be, professional, experienced playtesters or anything like that. They're just regular gamers, but they're likely to be willing to give you a bit of their time and their thoughts on what they enjoy in your games. I think that's a really useful way of approaching playtesting, but the challenge with it is that you don't feel like you're able to take up too much of their time. You don't want to completely overtake every gaming meetup every week with trying to get them to play your prototype games, particularly if you're quite prolific and you produce a lot of prototypes all the time. So often it means reaching out to game design groups, trying to locate those, and the best way to do that, I think, is to go out to game design stores and ask, do you know of a local group? If you get nowhere with that, you can look into board game cafes. These tend to have cropped up in cities all around the world. They may know, or they may even run a playtesting group in that cafe. You can also look online. Just look for playtesting groups, and you may well find one in your local area. In America, they have this system called Unpub, which is unpublished games, right, where you can go out and play in various events. They might be weekly events, monthly events, or annual events. But you can attend multiple of these. If you're willing to travel, you can usually get to a playtest group that's within reach. In the UK, we've got a wide network called Playtest UK that has little groups like mine in Cardiff, but there's groups like that all around the UK, and lots of really prominent designers have come out of that network. But note there that sometimes I'm playtesting with designers, and that's a very different thing, a very different feel, because designers tend to have an outlook on games that maybe doesn't necessarily mesh with the general population. Right? So you're getting a very specific type of view. Often it's quite harsh feedback that comes from designers. Often they'll be trying to tell you how to fix your game, and that may not be the sort of feedback that you're looking for. So it is worth trying to identify who are these people that sat in front of me, and are they giving you a genuine picture of what the average player out there who might purchase your game might give you. When you look at YouTube reviewers, even if you're watching YouTube reviewers and you're getting a feel for the games that they're playing. They've played potentially hundreds or thousands of games. They might be playing numerous games every single week or every single day, and probably playing a lot of those games only once or twice ever. Is that a genuine picture of what the average player experiences when they purchase that game in the board game shop, or even not in a board game shop, in a supermarket or in a bookshop, right? And they take it home, they learn it, and they play it. They're getting a very different experience to somebody who has played thousands of times, and it's their job to test these games. So what we're looking for often when we're looking for playtesters is casual players, people who don't, it's not their entire identity playing games. It's certainly not their job to play games. We want somebody who gives you a genuine experience that is similar to other people that are likely to be purchasing your games. And that can be the hardest group to access. How do you find these casual players? I quite like to go to board game conventions and play test there. I suppose I'm not meeting the most casual of players, because these are people who have bought a ticket and travelled across the country to attend a convention. So they're pretty deep into the hobby. But it does at least give me an opportunity to access players who, haven't made it their mission to play test games, right? They've just turned up at a convention and they're willing to give me a little bit of their time. Another group that can be quite difficult to access is when you're looking for specific demographics. So let's say you're designing a game for children. Well, you're going to have to play it with children, and children of the right age range. If you're designing a game for a specific demographic, again, you're going to have to find that group of players and get your game out there in front of them. So you're going to have to be a little bit resourceful in finding those groups of players. And then the final group of players that I will sometimes seek out to test my games is what I would call stress testers. So these are, what I often find they are, is players who are extremely good at playing games. They're the sort of players that always win and enjoy winning. They're competitive, right? What they're going to do if you give them this mission is they're going to break your game. So you put the game in front of them and you say to them, I want you to find all the ways that my game is flawed. Like, what is the dominant strategy? Is there one thing that is just the obvious thing to do and that I've not spotted? And they'll find it, right? And they'll break the game and they'll tell you the reasons that your game is unbalanced. It's not always the most enjoyable process, okay, because they are going to rip your game apart. And if they're particularly confident, then sometimes they can be quite brash in their feedback and so on. But you kind of want your game tested to its absolute limits, particularly if you're designing something that's a strategy game with levels of strategy within it. So my book, Adam in Wales Playtesting, one of the chapters, I think the second chapter in here, is called Getting to Know Your Playtesters. And it breaks down a series of questions that you might ask your playtesters to kind of get a feel for who they are, what sort of stuff they enjoy, where they are in terms of their experience of games. So we're getting a feel for who these people are before we take on board their feedback, so that we can view it in the context of their personality and their preferences. So here are 10 traits that I think are really valuable in a playtester. So number one is honesty. The willingness to give you both positive and negative feedback, to tell you as it is, right? To tell you the genuine picture of what your game is like, but hopefully to do it in a respectful way, to be careful enough to look after your feelings as a designer, but not so careful that they don't tell you the truth. Number two on my list is patience. Your playtesters are going to end up playing some pretty bad games, and they're going to play with some pretty shoddy prototypes as well. Poor components, poor art, poor graphic design, and they're going to have to put up with this stuff. Sometimes the games are going to go on for a long time, sometimes they're never going to end, sometimes they're going to have broken strategies in them, and your playtesters are going to have to endure this. Next on my list is I would like them to be curious, and I'd like them to be analytical. I want them to love games, love exploring games, but not just play them superficially and just let them wash over them. I want them to actually, in their brain, unpick that game. What's going on in it? Why is it working the way that it is? Okay, what's fun about it? What's not so fun? What did I enjoy? What didn't I? I want them to experience emotions when they're playing that game, hopefully heightened emotions. I want them to get a real thrill from it. Or if they dislike the game, I want them to feel that really strongly so that they can tell me, do you know, this game really turned me off, right? So curious, but analytical enough that they can explain to me why they felt those emotions and what they think it was in the game that generated that stuff. Next on the list is I want the person to be detail oriented and I want them to be specific. So ideally, if they can focus in and not just give me big broad strokes, but actually tell me detail about which specific aspects of the game caused the issues that they're seeing or the positive experience that they had. But while I want them to be detail oriented and I want them to be specific, I also want them to be able to see the big picture. I want them to be a big picture thinker. So that if they spot a flaw in the game or a broken element in the game, I want them to be able to log that, note it, and then move past it so that they can continue to play the game without keep coming back to that same point. Otherwise, you end up with a playtest that as soon as they hit something that's a bit limited, the playtest can't continue. And that means you're going to be much, much slower in developing your game. So the ideal playtester will focus in on a specific problem, will note it, provide that feedback, and then move on and make whatever solution they need to make to be able to continue to play the game. The ideal playtester will be a clear communicator. It's really important that they don't just experience things, but that they can tell you what they've experienced and they can explain it in a way that you understand. So a good, clear communicator is invaluable as a playtester. Next on the list is consistency and commitment. We're asking a lot of playtesters, as I said. We need them to be patient, but ideally I want somebody who's willing to play the same game over and over again through different iterations without getting too frustrated with that. And that's a big ask. Okay, I personally am involved with or I run a weekly playtest group. So we're turning up week after week, and that is great because as designers, it gives us a sort of deadline to work to each week, but it does mean that we end up playing the same games again and again and again. And sometimes we're playing a game over and over again that isn't quite working, but we're committed enough to do that. Next on the list, number 8, is emotional intelligence and insight and being open-minded to other people's views, recognizing that not everybody feels the same way that you do, recognizing the power of your words and the impact that you can have with what you say, so that hopefully you can identify the emotions that you're feeling. You can control them if you're feeling frustrated or disappointed because you're losing or because the game was unfair or whatever. You can recognize that, okay, that is not the intent of the designer. You don't have to give it, with both barrels, okay? But understanding your own emotions and those of other people is going to make you a really valuable tester. Number 9 is concentration. I talked about commitment and consistency, but I also want my playtesters to really focus on what we're doing. Take it seriously, right? We're there, yes, to socialize and to have fun, but also I'd like them to pay attention when I'm teaching the rules, okay? Because I might be struggling a little bit to teach the rules because the rules might be a little bit half-baked, okay? But if they can concentrate and they can listen and they can take the test seriously, then I'm going to get much more out of it than if it's purely social and people are messing about or not focusing or distracted by other things. Finally then, on my list of 10 traits from a playtester is that a playtester can be really good if they're just instinctive, if they just get it, right? Some people just are great playtesters. They just understand games. They've just got an eye for it. They've got a mind for it, okay? And it can really help if they've got a broad knowledge of games, if they've played a lot of games too. So sometimes you're looking out for those people who just understand, who just get it. Now, there's a couple of things that I haven't got on my list of traits that I know that other people would consider important. So the first one is objectivity. I know that a lot of designers want their playtesters to be objective, to try not to be coloured by their own biases and preferences. So, if they're a particular fan of heavy strategy games, well, don't let that sway your opinion of my simple little party game, right? It's no use telling me, well, I don't like little party games. How does that help me? Okay, I need you to analyse the game as it is in the form that it is. Now, I said some designers feel that way. I don't. I've got to be honest, I think trying to get your playtesters to be objective is futile. I don't think they're ever going to be objective. Nobody can be truly objective. What use is it getting somebody who is a fan of a heavy strategy game to offer you an opinion on your little silly party game? right? They're never going to enjoy it. And sure, you could ask them to pretend, okay, imagine what it would be like if you were a fan of a silly little party game. But frankly, I could do that myself. If I wanted to imagine how somebody else might feel about this game, I can do that on my own, right? I don't need somebody else to do it for me. I'm not saying don't play it with those people. What I'm saying is ask for their honest feedback, their honest views about the game, how they felt about it, what they enjoyed, what they didn't enjoy about it, and take that feedback in the context of what you know about their biases and their preferences. It is useful for me to know what a heavy strategy gamer felt about my silly little party game, as long as they give me their honest view, right? They don't try and filter it by imagining what somebody else would feel. Right? Of course, it's even more useful if I can get feedback from somebody who loves silly little party games, because they're likely to be the people who pick it up off the shelves and purchase it. And the second thing that I haven't included in my list of traits is a problem solver. A lot of people, when they're going out looking for playtesters, what they're looking for is people who will solve the problems in their games. And in my mind, that's not really the job of a playtester, that's the job of you as a designer. If you're looking for somebody to solve the problems in your games, you're probably looking for a co-designer or a developer. You're not really looking for a playtester. And if you're asking that of your playtesters, then I think you're kind of giving up one aspect of what it is to be a designer. What I need is a person who is a problem identifier. I want my playtesters to spot issues in the game, raise them with me, tell me how it made them feel, tell them what they would like to feel, and then I can set about finding the solutions to those things. Now, inevitably, those things cross over, right? Playtesters will make suggestions, and sometimes those suggestions are really useful. And I'm not saying I would never take those things on board. I would be foolish to completely shut my ears and say, no, I don't want to hear it, I don't want to hear it. But it shouldn't be your goal to get other people to fix your game. So how can playtesters help us as designers? What things would I like from my playtesters? I think it's nice if a playtester asks, what do you want from this playtest session? I mean, ideally as a designer, I would lay that out at the beginning anyway. Do I want that sort of playtester feedback, or do I want that sort of developer, co-designer type feedback? And I suppose a distinction is going to be made there between, am I playing with other designers or am I playing with more casual players? Do I want feedback on a very specific aspect of the game, or do I want feedback on the overall game? Okay, if they're asking me this stuff, I can see that they're trying to help. They're trying to focus in and help me as a designer as much as possible. Do I want feedback on the presentation of the game? Do I want feedback on the theme of the game? Or do I just want feedback on the mechanisms and the gameplay? So these are really useful questions for a playtester to ask. I'd also like it if they sort of ask me how and when I want that feedback. And again, I would probably explain this up front, but I know not all designers do. Personally, I usually want feedback at the end of the game, and that may not be the conclusion of the entire thing. I might stop it at a certain point and say I've learnt enough. What I don't really want is feedback after every turn at every stage, because it breaks the flow of the game, and then no one's really experiencing the emotions that they should be experiencing. And so I don't get the feedback that really is beneficial to me. So I would prefer people wait till the end, but I certainly meet other designers who say, yeah, just give me the feedback as we go along. And that's fine, as long as we all know where we stand and when they want it. How do they want that feedback? Do they want it verbal feedback? Do they want written feedback? Are we going to be filling out forms? I think it's useful for the playtesters to know that stuff up front. The next thing I would like from a playtester is that they show an interest in the game. But I don't want to give them too much information that it colours their views, right? So if they start asking me a lot of questions about the game, fantastic. They're interested, they're intrigued by it. That's a really good sign, and it's a sign of somebody who's going into it with a really constructive mindset. But I don't want to give them so much information that I've coloured their views going in, because people purchasing that game from the board game shop, they're not going to have all that information up front. Okay, they're going to rely on picking up the game, reading what's on the back of the box, reading the rule book and getting playing. So interest, but tempered a little, right? Let's hold a little bit back so they are going into it a little bit blind. Another thing a playtester can do that's really helpful is to take notes, particularly if I'm going to ask them to reserve their feedback until we finish the game. If they've taken some notes, then they're not going to forget what's gone on, so it's really useful for them to have a pen and paper handy. Finally, I would really like it if playtesters bring their experience to the table, right? If they can tell me about other games that they've played that are similar or dissimilar or do it better or do it worse, other games that I would be competing with in the market, how other designers have solved similar problems to what I'm experiencing, all that stuff, bringing their experience, bringing their knowledge of games to the table can make for a really interesting, constructive conversation. And certainly there's going to be gaps in my board gaming knowledge that other people can fill because they've just played different games to me. Okay, so I think that can be really useful too. And from the point of view of designers, what can you do to help your playtesters? Well, number one is you've got to respect their time. Okay, these people are playing games that are unfinished, often unfun, often really challenging in all sorts of different ways, often with poor presentation, as I said, poor artwork, poor graphic design, poor components. They're giving you a lot, and very, very frequently they are not paid for this work. Now I know with some big publishers they will pay playtesters to get involved with the process. And if you want to get involved in that way as a playtester, then you need to reach out to publishers and explore those opportunities, email them, ask them if you can do blind playtests for them, or look out for notifications online. And you may get rewarded in some way. But most are doing it for nothing, just for pure altruism, right? So what can we give back? How can we show our gratitude? Well, you could give them some money. Okay, you could pay them, but that's going to get very expensive very soon, and designers, we don't make very much money from our games. Okay, if you start giving away a lot of money to playtesters, then basically you're not making anything. So I think if you can get people to do it on a volunteer basis, that's better, okay, as a freelance designer. But you do need to show gratitude, and so that means I'm likely to do things like buy somebody a drink, or provide them with some food if they come into my house to play test some games. Or, you know, if I'm play testing some games with some kids, I might give them a free copy of one of my previous games, because I do have designers' copies lying around. Things like that, little signs of gratitude go a long way, and hopefully the process of playing games is not quite as tedious as maybe I've made it sound, and so they actually get some enjoyment from the process as well. Finally, one thing that you can do, particularly if you're playing with other designers, is play their designs. If they're playing yours, certainly make sure that you're taking the time to give your own experience and your own feedback on their playtests too. So if you want to know more about playtesting process and the sort of questions that you might ask, my book, Adam in Wales Playtesting, is available on Amazon, and it contains 100 questions that you might ask playtesters, or you might ask yourself during the process, with a rationale for each of those questions, why you might ask that question, what sort of responses to expect, and how to use those responses. You can buy it in paperback form, it's print on demand, so you can get it pretty much anywhere in the world, but if it's not available in your country, then you can download an ebook, which is also available on Amazon. So if you do purchase a copy of Playtesting, please let me know how you got on. The best way to do that is with an Amazon review, because that really helps other people to discover the book as well. If you'd like to know more about playtesting, then you might want to watch this video next.